The BIU has just appointed two new athlete ambassadors. We spoke first to USA's Chloe Levins about her motivation in becoming a BIU athlete ambassador, about the role of the athlete ambassador, and what athlete ambassadors can do to help to ensure the integrity of biathlon. Stay tuned. So, Chloe, welcome to this podcast interview with the Biathlon Integrity Unit. Thanks very much for doing this. I wanted to start by asking you, what made you want to become an athlete ambassador for the BIU?
Simply, I think why I wanted to become an athlete ambassador was because of what the BIU stands for, which is protecting the rights of clean athletes and upholding the integrity of the sport of biathlon itself. To be able to play even just a small part in preventing potential future wrongdoing is extremely satisfying for me and gives me a greater sense of purpose and duty outside of the competitions themselves.
And what do you think is the biggest threat to the integrity of biathlon?
In biathlon right now, I think that the biggest threat are matters of doping, for both the ethical implications and the health side effects. The BIU does a great job of protecting the integrity of the sport through investigations and prosecuting violations with the team of lawyers and data analysts that they have. But I think it's a pressing matter, and it's up to the ambassadors to spread the word and also to help educate and think critically about other ways we can help on the ground at competitions. And I'm really passionate about educating juniors in clean sport and competing clean for their own health and also just for matters of playing true.
One of the problems I think the BIU has struggled a bit with is persuading athletes to become whistleblowers when they do see wrongdoing in practice. Are you aware of that as a problem? And what would you say to athletes who might think, should I report this or not?
Yes, I think that report everything. We are working now to actually make the hotline for reporting more visible on the ground at venues. And I think that's really important. I think that any suspicion is valid, and I would recommend to my teammates and anyone who suspects wrongdoing in terms of doping and harassment and abuse to use that hotline. And yeah, the integrity unit as a whole is working towards making that more accessible and increasing the knowledge surrounding that hotline in of itself.
What can you, as an athlete ambassador, do to help to ensure the integrity of biathlon, do you think?
I think specifically in my case, I come from a golf background, actually, which is a sport that relies heavily on proper etiquette and honesty and sportsmanship for fair competitions. So it's often the case in golf that you need to call penalty strokes on yourself for a fair game. And having grown up in a sport like that, it's a natural interest and inclination of mine to help motivate and educate the global biathlon family to compete fairly, safely, and cleanly for the good of the sport and the good of themselves. So knowledge is power at the end of the day, and that will never change. And I think that I will work to spread the word about some of the tools that the BIU already has in place by communicating on public channels and increasing awareness and visibility about the integrity matters on the ground at events too.
That's really interesting, the parallel with golf. For those who are less familiar with golf as a sport, what makes it special in this regard, do you think?
Often you can have instances in golf where you've accidentally broken the rules and it becomes a matter of intent. And so if you touch the golf ball intentionally and you have to call a penalty on yourself, but no one else has witnessed it, then it becomes up to you and your good sportsmanship and your ethics to be able to add a stroke to your score, and do that just because of what you believe in and the good of the game. There's countless rules and regulations in golf, and I can guarantee you that every professional golfer has a rule book in their bag to reference so that they don't come across a situation where they've accidentally broken the rules or just by accident forgotten to add a stroke or penalty stroke because of an accidental rule violation. And the consequences for that are disqualification in golf. And so it's because the golf course is expansive and you're spread out across a greater territory. You're not always with your playing partners. And so you're very accountable for your own honesty and etiquette when you're conducting a shot around the ball. And so in that way, I find rules fascinating and playing by the rules and making sure that everyone is aware of them and can conduct themselves appropriately in competitions is really important to me and has always been a part of sport.
That's really interesting, Chloe. I don't know if you're aware, but we're just about to launch what we're calling Summer of Respect in biathlon, which is all about respect for the rules, respect for your opponent, respect for your coach, and so on. Fits in very well with what you were talking about there, I think.
I was just going to touch on the point of respect, and I think golf is an easy target for that because it's a slow played game and it's a country club sport, and there's just a lot of proper etiquette that goes along with it. But that doesn't mean that like biathlon, an outdoor winter sport, can't have the same kind of sportsmanship surrounding it if people buy into that culture.
I was reading that as a student, you studied the history of how performance-enhancing techniques were utilized in Olympic sports as a leverage for political power. That sounds really interesting. Can you tell me a bit more about that and what conclusions you drew from your research?
Absolutely. I conducted that independent capstone project in high school, and it was about how sport played a role in the establishment of geopolitical power during critical times of international conflict. So it incorporated engineering and math concepts as well as international relations and global studies components in my research. And I focused specifically on how certain nationalistic regimes utilized results at Olympic Games as propaganda to establish international superiority. And also how systemic doping programs that were state-run and funded, how they were put in place to ensure that nation's success during Olympic Games throughout history for national pride, number one, and number two, international glory and power. So the STEM component of that project looked at the detrimental health consequences of taking things such as anabolic steroids and other performance enhancers. I looked at events, specifically the 1936 Berlin Olympic Games, which occurred during the rise of Nazi Germany. And I investigated how sport was grossly used as propaganda for the superiority theory. And other major events I looked at took place during the Cold War, and such as the US's boycott of the 1980 Moscow Olympic Games after the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. So I looked at both how doping was used as leverage to achieve international success in sport and how that represented political power, and then also how the attendance of Olympic events or lack thereof during boycotts was used as a political tactic or a political stance. And that battle of ideologies between East and West during the Cold War was a big component of that project.
Really interesting, Chloe. So then finally, just away from doping, another of our concerns, as you know, at BIU is safeguarding. In your view, obviously there have been, big issues of safeguarding recently, including in the USA, actually. How can sport improve its approach to safeguarding?
That's a great question, and it's something that I'm very passionate about, especially as a young female in the sport. I I'm not only passionate about the importance of completing clean, but I think that as an ambassador for the next couple years, I would really like to focus my energy and channel my energy towards safeguarding against harassment and abuse within the IBU community as well. As I said before, knowledge is power. And I think that spreading the word about those tools, such as the reporting hotline, is a great place to start, and making that more accessible and visible to the community. I think that there's a little bit of a lack of understanding that you can report not only allocations of or instances of doping, but also instances of harassment and abuse to that hotline. And especially educating juniors in that realm, I think will be really important, because they just based on purely age are a little bit more vulnerable. And so getting out to the junior community and the junior cup events is really important to the BIU. And I'm a huge proponent of that. Right now, I'm collaborating with a member of the gender equity unit. So we're doing a collaborative project, joint project. And so we're in the brainstorming stages right now, but the gears are turning and the wheels are spinning. And it seems like standardizing education around the topic across all national federations is a really good to start. So that's where we will begin our project, our joint project, collaborative project, with the gender equity unit. But there's definitely more to do, and I look forward to being an ambassador and a proponent of protecting not only women from harassment and abuse, but everyone in the biathlon family.
Chloe, that's great. Thank you so much. That was really interesting, and all the very best for the forthcoming season.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was great to meet you.